We're joined by Guy Keller, Portfolio Manager at Tribeca's Nuclear Energy Opportunities Fund. Guy, thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me back again. It's great to be here at the conference yet again.
You take a global view with the fund. Valuations. You look at companies on multiple exchanges. How do valuations differ amongst the exchanges and jurisdictions?
Yeah, I was just in North America a few weeks ago and a number of conferences there and chatting to investors and peers, and there is that thought process that the ASX uranium stocks are more expensive in a valuation perspective. And I think that largely comes down to the index implications of some of these stocks. I mean, there's now 7 uranium stocks in the ASX Small Ordinaries Index. And as you're aware, there's a lot of discretionary money that plays in the 101 to 300 stocks in the ASX. A year ago there was 0. So there's a lot more eyeballs that need to make a decision on that 5% of the index weight now as to whether to buy. And I think that is contributing to that, where they're not necessarily making a decision on uranium, it's an index decision. And we will get to a point where that buying plateaus, as we've seen in others. But there's still a fair bit of buying to go left, I think. And so for those looking at the ASX, if you're in the small ordinaries or close to it, you'll get that valuation uplift. But you know, it's remained to be seen if further down the capital stack you're going to get that.
You look at valuation through your own lenses. How do you form a valuation opinion, and what do you look for?
See, I don't get worried about something that's seemingly expensive on valuation grounds, because 90% of the uranium sector, or 95% of it, doesn't generate cash flows. You know, there's developers, explorers, there's only a handful that will be producing uranium, and you can model that better. So then valuation becomes very much more of a discretionary science, depending on where you have your long-term price forecast, depending on the value you want to give in situ for pounds in the ground and resources, and depending on the weights you want to give that for closeness to production. So, you know, I tend to make my own views on where I see the companies for what the company's doing, and whilst I will acknowledge where they sit on a comparative basis, it doesn't necessarily stop me investing in a company.
Are there any regions that you're looking at that take more focus than others, where we're seeing the Athabasca, for example, a lot of companies moving in there? Do you take a regional view?
Look, the Athabasca, I think I actually picked up a map of the area when I was up in Toronto, and I framed that in my study at home just to remind me of how much of that basin is pegged and staked now. And I think that's going to be a really interesting, almost minefield for investors, because you're going to see a lot of those projects vend into ASX companies or TSXV, and they're going to compete for capital, and they're not necessarily going to be the best parts of that basin. So it's going to be interesting, because there's going to be a lot of noise and activity come out of the Athabasca in the coming 6 to 12 months, and I think you're really going to have to make sure you do your homework as to what was around last cycle, what are the teams that are bringing that to market, and back those that you believe that can do it, as opposed to something that's turning up fresh on the scene.
We're also seeing mainstream media linking nuclear, uranium to discussions about data centres and AI. How's that occurring, and why do you think that is going to be such an interesting linkage going forward?
It's incredible how much news flow that has got in the last month or so. I mean, it's just exploded into the mainstream media and I think that's around NVIDIA and the energy intensity of that. I think, you know, Google Trends, you Google NVIDIA electricity consumption, and there's all these statistics that it's, you know, the electricity consumption of African nations. I think there was something overnight about, you know, current data centres are 2% of US electricity, but that's going to quadruple in the next 10 years. And then you're seeing data centres respond to that. So Amazon Web Services spent $650 million to buy part of Talon Energy's data centre that they built themselves, connected to their nuclear power plants in Pennsylvania. And, you know, from what I understand, it's a big price tag they've paid, because they need that baseload 24/7 electricity for a start, and the fact that it's low to zero carbon also helps them in their message. And then overnight we've seen Nucor Steel announce a collaboration with Microsoft and Google to collaborate to encourage the advancement of an advanced electricity supply, advanced technology for electricity in the United States. and that's going to include a lot of nuclear future technologies.
What do you think the future holds? You've been in the industry a long time, you've seen the ups, you've seen the downs. What does the next 12, 18 months look like?
Well, I mean, as I've said plenty of times, I have a supply deficit out past 2030 on the existing gigawatt-style large nuclear reactors that we can't solve even at current prices. When we throw in AI and data center news flow, when we throw in industry looking for electricity supply, that's going to be an even bigger source of demand. The mining sector in uranium, the developers, the explorers, the capital is going to need to do a lot of work in the next 12 months. We're going to, as I said before, there's going to be a lot of new entrants, but we really, really need to focus on being able to get some supply in for this thesis so that it doesn't fall down on lack of availability.
The Tribeca Nuclear Energy Opportunities Fund is clearly leading the way in both its understanding and knowledge around this sector, but where it deploys capital on behalf of its investors. Guy, always great to catch up. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be back. Cheers.